Groby from SumnerOne. Jeff, good to see you.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Look like you're ready for some dark meat.
I am.
Right.
How'd you know?
Well, because, you always talk about the dark web. I figured,
Yeah, that was a good one.
you go, the dark meat. Okay, so we're going to talk about keeping kids safe online. I think I've got a solution right now. Don't show them any sale prices.
That's a good one.
All right?
Yep.
Very good
That
idea.
works.
I'm going to start off with this. I used to do a thing for my kids. I did it, and I actually put it on the air back in the day. It was called the 13 Rules to Freedom on the Road. And I made my kids sign it before they got their driver's licenses. And it was stuff like, I won't have, friends in the car. I'll wear my seatbelt. Simple stuff. Stuff that all kids should do.
Sure.
I'll let you know when I'll be home, blah, blah, blah. These days, I don't think a contract like that would be a bad thing for kids to sign. Your parents give it to them and say, hey, look, I'm not going to share any personal information on the air. And if I want to put personal information in, I'm going to ask you first to intervene and take a look, and maybe come up with a checklist of things. Because you know what? It's so easy. Our kids know more about computers than we do.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And so they're off in their rooms or down on the lower level or wander around the house because you got Wi-Fi, and they're doing all kinds of stuff online that you never, ever, ever see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I'll bet a lot of those kids have gotten into trouble one way or the other online.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic idea. I've never actually even thought about that, but that's kind of a soft method of being able to have an agreement with your kids and get them to understand the risks.
At least you've had that, you've had the conversation and you've planted the seed, whether they do it or not, whether they make bad decisions online or not. You really can't help if you're going to let them go online, but at least, if you've had that discussion, it's something better than not doing anything.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's talk about, what parents face in these times where, it's getting faster and easier and...
Yeah, it's a huge problem. How do you protect your children at the end of the day? And luckily there are some utilities and some tools and some equipment that you can purchase nowadays that make it a little bit easier. But still, it does come back to having a relationship with your child. It's not a spectator sport. You've got to be interactive with your child. You've got to be in their life. You got to know who their friends are. You got to know what they're doing and make it easy for them to approach you and talk about stuff as well.
Yeah.
But beyond that, one of the things that I tell people all the time is parental control routers. There's several on the market that are very, very good at what they do. In my house, particularly, we use one called Circle by Disney, and it allows me full control over everything my children do on the internet based on the MAC address of their devices. So basically, the basic identifier that identifies their device on my network, I have full control. I can turn it off, turn it on, filter the content, reward them with additional time.
How old are you kids?
I have, right now they're from 7 to 17 in about every 2 years.
Wouldn't you hate to live at his house? You'd be like, Dad, I just wanted to see that swimsuit edition online.
More time.
And that's a good point. The kids are so smart nowadays. You brought that up a minute ago.
Sure.
I used a different method of filtering my children's web content for a long time. It was just a different set of DNS servers that filtered content. And one of my older children that's tech savvy had figured out a way around it. So then I had to go out and purchase the Circle device, which they haven't been able to thwart thus far.
And for parents listening, and myself included, who's not tech savvy, are these literally things you go to Best Buy and purchase?
Absolutely. You can walk right into Best Buy and say, take me to the Circle device, and they'll take you. It's a little white box, and you actually plug it into your modem in between your wireless router and your modem, and then there's an application you run on your phone, Android or iPhone, and you configure it, and create an identity for each one of your children, and then assign devices to them, and then you can set their filter level and track everything. So,
it seems easy, but they'll figure out, they'll circumnavigate around it.
Yeah, it's a matter of time.
It is a matter of time. All right, so then that brings me to the point of you're under my roof, you're in my house, you don't have any rights here. How involved should we get with respect to their history?
You should be very involved. There's lots of scary things out there. People get enticed away from their families all the time by people and threats that come across the internet. And there's predators out there that are actively looking to target your children. So I tell people, There's no such thing as too much here. You need to be as vigilant as possible to your comfort level, basically. But, you know, in my house, I tell my kids, and I'm very open with them, everything on the network I own. So don't do anything on the network that you wouldn't want me to see, because I can see it all.
Good for you. Yeah. You actually physically went to the site yourself. How would you know?
Well, that's the other thing, is just using Google to make sure, you know, so if something's questionable that shows up in a log, I just go ahead and Google it and try to confirm whether or not before I'll, you know, confront the children with it. So.
Sure, okay. Well, you know, we talked about the tools, you know, maybe this circle device, and there are some other ones. Is that kind of an industry term?
No, the circle device is actually a proprietary name. The industry term, if anybody wants to look for one of these devices and purchase it, simply type into Google parental control router. And
okay.
That'll bring up about 10 or 15 devices that are out there right now.
Okay, so what is the device that poses the most risk for kids? Is it, you know...
Phones.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, iPhones and Android phones. I won't let my children even have a phone until they're 13, 14 years old. And even then, I still lock it down pretty hard, and we track them. The good news is that the phones all have GPS capabilities built into them. So when my kids leave the house, I use an app called Live 360 that I can track their whereabouts and see it on a map at any given time.
God! Am I glad I did not live today? Wait, I'm alive.
Grow up today.
Glad my parents aren't alive.
Jeff, do you think that your kids ever, I don't know, leave their phone at somebody's house and then they go elsewhere?
That we've had some strong conversations, and it turned out that it was a battery that died, but I thought somebody had turned it off, and I said, as long as I'm paying your phone bill, you keep this on at all times. And they've listened to me so far, except for that one incident with the battery.
Yeah. So let's talk about safety when they're out. You know, they got a phone, they run into some kind of trouble. What's the best thing to do then?
I mean, I would take, well, every situation could be different here. It depends on what the threat is ultimately, but I would, you know, definitely I would lock down the device, take away their access, have a come to Jesus meeting about what happened, and then try to get them to understand the threat. You know, children are so innocent. You have to balance that fine line between revealing too much information and then trying to be safe at the same time, because you don't want to ruin their innocence at the same time. But there really just are nasty people out there. And it's not that's unique to our time. It's just that the communications and the capabilities of people have gotten so much better because of the technology that now they're exposed from all sorts of angles that they weren't before.
Yeah, and is there any way when you find something on their phone or their computer that seems a little untoward, is there any way to trace that back to somebody? You know,
typically the logs. So you know, if I find photographs or something like that, you know, I'll start asking questions. Not that I've done this, but if I were to find photographs on say my daughter's phone or something like that, I would look at logs, see timestamps on the photographs, look and see if there's any EXIF information, which is the extra data that gets stamped on pictures. A lot of people take pictures with their phones and send them to people. They don't realize that the date and time and the location that the picture was taken gets stamped and sent along with it. So you can take that picture, download it to a computer, and find out exactly where it came from. And
that's great stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. It's a scary time we live in, and I was worried about going to Sam's for Black Friday, but there's so much more danger out there than that. Jeff Groby with SumnerOne. Thanks again. Have a great Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you very much.
You bet. If you want to get in touch with these guys, or you have questions about your office or your home devices, SumnerOne.com online. It is 439 at the Big 550.